Here's the pagan view of war. This is exemplified especially by the Roman Empire, and as well as the Mohammedans. And one of the marks of the pagan view of war is that there's a standing professional army. A standing professional army. Notice we have in the United States or in modern countries, there are standing professional armies. So we've already got a pagan view of war because we have a professional army of people whose job is simply to make war. A standing army meaning there's an army that's just there ready to go. All they do is train for war, and they can go to war at a moment's notice. They're not farmers. They're not, doing some other profession. They're a standing army. Now, another aspect of the pagan view of war is that they're wars of empire and conquest. So these are not just wars. A just war, which is primarily defensive in terms of defending against an aggressor in a situation where there's no other way to resolve it. These are wars that are invading other countries to establish an empire, create further empire. Now, I have written at OnePeterFive many times that the United States is the American empire. And I don't say that lightly, but I do say that because the United States has waged many wars of conquest and empire, notably invading Catholic countries like Spain and Quebec. Not quite Catholic per se, but Quebec City was Catholic under the crown, under the Anglican crown. The invasion of Canada in 1812, the War of 1812 was the invasion of Canada, and the invasion of Mexico in 1848, as well as the invasion of the Spanish crown in 1898. And with further examples we could add. So the United States has expanded its territory by means of conquest, by means of this imperial expansion. And so that's why I say American empire. Unfortunately, that's the case. That's the reality. Now, an important aspect of this is that might makes right. That is a false philosophy which empires use to expand their territory. Might makes right. The stronger establishes his own justice over the weaker, whereas the Christian view is the stronger must protect the weaker. What we see in the history of the church is that we have this pagan view of war, which is very bellicose. We have these different warring empires. To the north of the Roman Empire, we have the various barbarian tribes. But as there is an increase of Christian culture, there is a decrease of the police and the army. Increase of Christian culture, decrease of police and army. Today in the United States, there's controversies over gun laws. People want to impose laws to stop gun violence or to restrict the sale and the possession of weapons. But that doesn't do anything. People are sinful, violent people, whether they're using guns or knives or sharp objects. What really establishes peace is Christian culture. And we know this from history. Literally, the pagan barbarians were street thugs. And they were converted by the Christian church from street thugs into knights in shining armor, literally. The church established these periods of peace where it was unlawful to do any violence or make any war. So, for example, during Christmas, you could not make war. It sounds kind of funny, but these are the literal laws of Christendom. During Christmas, you can't make war. If you want to make war, wait till after Christmas. There was different days of the week. You couldn't make war on this day or that day. During Lent, can't make war during Lent. So notice that the church does not publish a complete ban on war, but promotes a tempered, gradual elimination of the bellicose violence of our forefathers, our pagan forefathers, who were street thugs. And it's through this this gradual tempering of the violent fallen nature of our pagan forefathers that eventually converts them from street thugs into knights in shining armor. Now, remember, we're going to get back to this. Remember that peace and truce of God, in that one cannot make war during Christmas. And Christmas starts on December 25, remember. It starts on December 25, then there's the octave of Christmas and the 12 days of Christmas, etc. What happens with modern wars is that it is a return to the pagan view of war. So we have the English Civil War of the 17th century. That's the return to the citizen professional army. We have the return of total war, the killing of civilians and infrastructure. We have the loss of Christian culture. Remember the peace and truce of God. There's a famous painting in the United States called Washington Crosses the Delaware. And this is a depiction of a surprise attack that Washington took against some Hussite mercenaries in the Revolutionary War in 1776 on December 26th. So this would have been on St. Stephen's Day at dawn. And the accounts indicate that Washington attacked these Christians, which would have been these Hussite Lutherans, because they were sleeping off their Christmas feasting. They were sleeping off their Christmas feasting. And he attacked them. Well, this is barbaric. This would not happen in Christendom, because you can't, unless people were willing to be excommunicated, you can't fight during Christmas. You cannot attack during Christmas. That's barbaric. And so this is a return. This is a loss of Christian culture. Now, this is in contrast somewhat to what happened during World War I, which is where there were, in 1914, there were Christmas truces. This was an entirely spontaneous thing that was happening in the trenches between the Germans and the English and the French, where they just said, hey, it's Christmas. We got to stop fighting. So they decided to call a truce, and then they all feasted together. And after this happened in 1914, the bellicose bureaucrats who were pushing for all this horrible war put a stop to that. So we see that there is a increase of, as Christian culture decreases, there's an increase of military intervention, police force, violence of every kind.